My name is Micah Sims, and I graduated in 2017. So I did business. With that, I focused a lot on like the marketing classes, communications, more focused on like the rhetoric rather than the like interpersonal, intercultural, because I'm already pretty naturally good at that, and political science. Yes and no. So I had been an intern for like 2-ish years, um, with Northwestern Mutual doing like financial planning. So I really structured my integrative studies around that, thinking, okay, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Like this is my calling. I want to help people, and that's where I'm going to be. That being said, the classes I took were very transferable no matter what field I'm in. So I started with the financial planning internship and I went full time with that. It was 100% commission. I did that full time for a year. And the two things I realized, well, the three things, the thing I realized the most from that is I want to help people in some capacity. And that really gave me an opportunity to help people financially. But I learned that people really don't trust financial advice from, a 21, 22-year-old. And I'm not money motivated. And it wasn't for me. It didn't do anything for me. It never fired me up. So I transitioned from there to a different style sales job. It was healthcare IT staffing. So I worked directly with management in the IT departments at hospital organizations and healthcare systems to put consultants in to like help build out their new softwares or do system updates or do training, from the tech side to the employees and the end users. It worked better for me, but I really didn't like hitting the phone every single day, get 60 dials. I didn't like being a KPI, a key performance indicator, which is any sales job you've got. It's tracking every little minute metric of your daily workload. And that just did not sit well with me. I was there for 2.5 years. I really kind of knew in the back of my mind I wanted to go somewhere else. And then COVID hit. So I lost almost $30,000 in commission in a month, just overnight because of COVID. And at that point, I was like, I think this is probably that nudge I needed to get out the door. I had a lot of recruiters, reach out, and I finally messaged one back for a company in Dallas. Interviewed. My interview was a little unsettling. My first gut reaction was, I don't know that I want to work here. And then I kind of, I talked to the guy again, talked myself back up to it and said, let's do this. So I would advise you, if your gut says, I don't feel uncomfortable with this, or I feel uncomfortable with this, just trust your gut. Don't go there. It was a terrible organization to work for. I mean, it was a true definition of Wolf of Wall Street in sales. And at that point, I said, I'm done. I'm absconding from sales. I hate it. I don't want to do this anymore. It's not me. Well, that's really tough to do when you structured your whole major around what you thought you wanted to do. And so I took 3 months, and in those 3 months, I interviewed at a lot of quote unquote marketing companies. So one company I applied for on LinkedIn kind of fit the bill. They reached out to me based on my experience. They said, we think you're qualified to be a manager, and we would rather hire you as a manager than a coordinator. So they basically thought I was ready to jump up 2 levels because I'd had experience with contracts. I had experience with a term called RFPs, which are requests for proposals. And I just had a really good reputation with a lot of my clients. I mean, I had retained so many clients from my sales days that like I still text some of them. So I kept those good relationships, and it seemed like a good fit. The company was spectacular. And on my first day, my VP came up to me and she said, welcome to licensing. Everyone has a live hand grenade and they don't know where to throw it, so they throw it at you. My job was to work with our sales team, our legal team, our marketing team, our art design team, our social media team. And I was supposed to work with the client. I mean, I literally was like packed every single day. It's crazy busy. After a couple of months, I kept getting told like it's going to take you a year to really get the hang of it. It's going to take you a year to get the hang of it. After about 8 months, I get a calendar invite from my director and the head of HR. I basically was approached with hey, you need to step down or leave. And where a lot of people would tuck their tail and leave, I stayed. And I kept a smile on my face no matter how painful it was. And I worked through it. And when I finally ended up leaving that company in the long run, my VP came up to me like a few days before I left, and she just flat out said, I will give you a recommendation anywhere you go for the rest of your life. You are always welcome to come back here. You have a great attitude. You kept your head held high, and you just don't see that in people. While I was there, I got to work on a lot of really cool things. It was very entrepreneurial in so many ways, even though it is a bigger organization. You can kind of make it what you want. So to put it in perspective, there was a game that came out during the pandemic called Fall Guys, and it was super big, fun thing. And not saying any names, but essentially I was working with that company trying to get a product launch off the ground, some clothing that we could get online onto Amazon or into some retailers like Hot Topic, just very niche specialty stores. And I had this brain idea. I was like, what if we find a Twitch streamer? And we found a Twitch streamer who was in a Disney movie back in the day, no names said, but pretty famous guy. He was a popular streamer, had a very core group, loves this game. So like I built out the timeline, I worked on the budget, I helped the UX designers like structure the website. I worked with like the marketing coordinators at the company that made the Fall Guys. I worked with our people internally on the marketing team, and I kind of got this bug for advertising. I loved it. It was so fun because I really did everything. I owned it from start to finish. But my time with that company had been coming to an end. I approached my director one day and I said, I need even a $5,000 raise will make a big difference. And she said, you have to do what you have to do if you have to find a job. So 4 months later, I approached them saying, hey, I found a job and an opportunity. It's, my director was not surprised because I'd had that conversation, but everyone else is, oh, what can we do to keep you? How can we keep you? I said, you got to pay me at least $30,000 more because that's what they're doing. And it was it just shut them up. They couldn't do anything, and they knew they couldn't. And I hold nothing against them because, they had a certain amount of money allocated to their department. So now I'm at a true marketing and advertising agency. I found this company and they had a opening for a brand manager, which is what I was, and an opening for a project coordinator. So I applied for both because I looked like, I could probably do either based on the description. So they reach out to me, hey, we want to do an interview. And I'm sitting right here where I'm at right now, doing this exact same kind of format interview with their HR recruiter. And she says, well, do you want to be a brand manager or a project manager? And I kind of stopped. I was like, well, I'm not a project manager. I don't have a Scrum certification. I don't have any Agile or any of that kind of, like, I don't have a PMP. I'm not a project manager. I'm a brand manager. And she said, well, let me explain this better to you. Our department used to be structured like what you're doing currently, where you're working with both the client and you're managing all the timelines and the finances and budget. And that's a lot for one person to do. So what we decided to do was split it in half. We've got the brand management team that maintains all the business and the statements of work and interfacing directly with the client. And then the project managers, you're involved in those conversations. And obviously you can be involved from an ideas perspective, but you're the one that's building the schedule, you're building the timelines, everyone who's everyone, and you're connecting people to get the projects done. And I sat back and I was like, that Twitch stream project I did was exactly like that. I loved that. That got me fired up. And I was like, let's do project management. Let's try that. So I interviewed with the project management director and they offered me a job as a project manager, and I was super excited. Now at this point, the last time I got offered a job as a manager that I wasn't qualified for, a very bittersweet conversation came up later down the road. And I had kind of an imposter syndrome setting in. And if you don't know what that is, it's going into a place where you feel like you don't belong. So imagine going to another country that you don't speak the language. It's a very intimidating thing. You're learning a totally new industry. I'm going from sales to licensing. Now I'm moving to advertising and marketing. That's wild. That's a big transition. I was just stressed and scared and nervous and I don't belong here. Amazing that I'm still there because it's full of TCU grads and I'm working really hard to get UNT people in there. So, I felt like I didn't belong in so many ways. End of my first day, my reporting supervisor came up to me and she said, hey, do you have anything going on right now? I said, no. She goes, okay, we're about to have an internal client call. Why don't you come join us and, just be a fly on the wall so you can start getting an ear for the business. She didn't know that I had healthcare background before. So I worked in that healthcare staffing for 2.5 years. So I know a lot of the lingo. So they're putting me on a healthcare account, not knowing that. So we're in this call. they're saying all these terms that I know, and I know how they're structured. I know how to build them. I know how to redline and do all the legal work on them. And they're talking about like healthcare providers and using all these little acronyms. And at the end of the call, she's like, okay, do you have any questions? And I was like, yeah, so you guys are working off SOWs, and like, how do you structure that? Is it a bucket of hours? Is it hourly? Are you paying it on a like quarterly basis? Is it each department has their own SOW? Is it all off one MSA? And I really started talking to the weeds, and I'll never forget this. My brand coordinator, so my counterpart, looked at me and she's like, you just made her day. And I'm like, what do you mean? And I look over, my supervisor's just smiling. She's like, I really always have to teach all the little intricacies of how those things work to anybody that starts here, because no one really understands how they work. So the fact that you know that and a lot of the healthcare lingo already puts you this much further ahead of a lot of people who start in this company. So you are in a really good spot. And that really settled the nerves. But all that to say, and I know this is a really long-winded answer for that question, I transitioned from all these careers and took away the one thing that was the most important in the first career, which is I want to help people. And I went to another company with that mentality, and another one, and another one, and another one. And at the end of the day, it was, I want to help people, but I want to do it how I do it best, which is trying to be the like ultimate source of knowledge. And like, hey, I don't know what to do. Oh, go ask Micah. He knows everything about everything. That's plain and simple what I do now that I never knew I wanted to do. In a lot of ways, I've thought like, oh, I wish I didn't take, the political science stuff, because it didn't really help. But in a lot of ways it did, because I was doing like court case appellate briefs and writing these very structured legal documents. And that has helped translate into a lot of the contract work that I've had to do and a lot of the legal redlining that I've had to do. Because when you're going from writing a paper about hegemonic masculinity and Beauty and the Beast for your rhetoric class, and then you have to turn around and write a 20-page court appellate brief on Roe v. Wade or something, the language is very different. It's not persuasive. It's very cut and dry. One word can make all the difference. So I don't regret taking political science at all. I think it did help in a lot of ways. The marketing and advertising classes, I think that's kind of speaks for itself. I work in that industry now. I'm looking at things like, hey, if we put this up, it might be perceived in this kind of way, and that's not going to be good. And that kind of leans towards a lot of the work that I did in marketing, was like looking at things very critically through a lens. From the communications perspective, I have no regrets. I love my communications professors. I still follow Dr. Lane and Professor Levichek. Like, they were absolute impacts on me, and I love them. I still have my journals from their classes and my note cards that I review them regularly. So like, I loved my communications classes. They helped so much. Organizational skills. I was not an organized student as a kid growing up. I developed an organizational sense of work ethic, especially during that last semester, because like 21 hours, you can't miss a thing. You absolutely can, or you fall behind and you start compounding and you just break down internally, and it's bad. I did that internship with Northwestern Mutual for 2 years. I learned the best expression I heard there was get comfortable being uncomfortable. There are going to be so many situations in life that you are tense, that you feel foreign, that you don't fit in, and you just have to know that that's the norm. Everyone deals with it. It's not just you. Get used to it and embrace it. Get involved, whether that's with the campus, whether that's with a mentor, alumni, or doing an internship. Do something that displaces you from the school and puts you in the real world. My first meeting with the French Club, I got nominated president, which was unexpected, and I got really into it. I loved it. It brought my grades up, it introduced me to new people, and it helped me learn about leadership in a way that I never thought I'd be interested in it. Just do something outside of your classes. Get involved in some way, shape, or form with something outside of your classes.